Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are back with another round of Playvision figures, another group of minis from Playvision, another group of long discontinued and very rare minis. We have the Marine Reptiles this time around. And honestly, to say that I am so happy to actually have all of these figures would be such an understatement because they're, again, like I said, they're just so hard to find. They've been discontinued for so long and they're very sought after. So it feels so fulfilling to actually be able to have these now all in my collection. You can see, again, you've got quite a few figures here in the bag, so we're going to go ahead, pop the bag open, pull them all out, and check them out one by one. So here are all of the figures here in this round. We have 8 again, just like with the amphibians, and not just 8, but 8 super cool looking figures. So I'm going to move them all out, readjust the camera, and we'll start taking a closer look at each and every one. Now the first one we have is a very underappreciated species that you don't see get made very often. It is the Nothosaurus, and that is a really cool one to have straight out of the gate. You can see when it comes to this figure, the mouth is wide open. We do have some teeth there on the inside of the mouth. We actually have the teeth painted out pretty nice and precisely. There is actually a little bit of alternate coloration, kind of like a reddish tone for the inside of the mouth, and as you can see, it actually has a gloss coat in there, which is so impressive, so crazy, considering again the time that this figure was made. We can see the nostrils sculpted out, also highlighted with what appears to be like a reddish or a pinkish tone. We have a black in there for the eyes, and a nice grayish tone for the primary body color. There is a darker gray that kind of moves through the center of the head, striping back, and then we actually have a blue stripe pick up and run down through the side of the body with that darker gray kind of striping down through the body, but also overtaking the entire spinal column and back of the figure. We have white spots as well, picking up and kind of running through the figure. You can even see gray striping and white spots moving down through the legs also. We do have webbing between the toes of the figure, which looks really cool. The skin texture primarily is kind of smooth and everything like you would kind of expect it to be, but still pretty decent again, considering it is a minifigure. You can see the other side looks really good. You have a nice long tail. I will say that this one, you know, absolutely has like that kind of vintage look to it when it comes to Nothosaurus, but overall I would say, again, it's a really cool looking figure and definitely a nice looking interpretation of what you would have seen this species looking like, especially in the 90s. So a little dated, I would say, but still pretty darn cool. Then we've got one that you don't see very often, but I have actually seen because there is a very cool Schleich version out, but this is the Shonisaurus, and you can see this one looks incredibly striking, also gorgeous as a whole. It is by far one of the nicest looking versions of this species that I have ever seen. You've got a really nice looking, quite grumpy look, honestly, to the head sculpt. You could see like a black for the eye and then some dark browns that kind of pattern down over the top of the head into the eye area. Also some spots as you move up there along the snout. You can see the mouth itself sculpted pretty nicely on the figure. Same deal when you look at it from over here. And then moving back through the figure, you pick up this really nice striping effect, which is a very abundant striping moving through. We have like a yellowish tone of color for the primary body color, and then you have this dark brown that stripes through the entire figure. You can see some spotting up here on the dorsal fin, as well as spotting as you move down here into the lower fins. Actually, a little more like striping as you move back there to the rear fin. Nice smooth texturing to the underside of the figure. There is a little bit of a curve to the tail as you lead out, and then you have some more spots out there on the tail of the Shonisaurus. And overall, the skin texture on this one as well is nice and smooth. Again, kind of what you would expect for something like this, but another super cool looking figure and a very nice species choice. Then we've got another really cool one that happens to have a pretty significant look to it, sort of making it look like a turtle, but this is another really cool marine reptile. This is Henodus, and again, I'm not absolutely positive if I said the name correctly. I actually never knew how to pronounce the name perfectly for this species, but I think that's how you say it. But you can see, again, as you move through, you've got some really nice looking skin texture here all throughout the face. You can also see variations of greens and browns here moving down through the neck. As you lead up into the face, you actually have like a light kind of like greenish sort of a tone, almost like a It's a very interesting tone of color. It looks like a green. It's just so subtly applied. It's almost like a really light green. You can see it out here on the tip of the tail as well. We can see the eyes sculpted nicely, painted with a basically like that light greenish sort of a tone, and then also a black pupil. And that also has a bit of a gloss coat to it. This side doesn't really have that sort of greenish tone moving over it, so you can see it is a little inconsistent from one side to the other, but still pretty decent. We can see the nostrils, the mouth as well, sculpted out right there. As you move back, you can see the front leg moving down, has some more variations of greens and browns as you lead through. And when you come to the top, you can see the shell looks very cool and has some very bumpy kind of like texturing to it overall. Very nice, vibrant, sort of a brownish tone though. Like it's a surprisingly striking dark brown tone that we have here that really shines because again the figure does have a nice sort of a wet look to it, and then again more greens as you move up there toward the front. As you move to the back, you can see the little legs sticking out here on the back, again given the greenish tone, as well as that very bumpy tail leading out of the back with the brown and then transitioning to that greenish tone. And then as you move here to the underside, you can still see again the skin texture and everything looks good, and there is also even a little variation of color down here on the underside of the shell. You can see kind of like a light, almost like pinkish brown tone that moves through the figure and looks pretty cool. So very, very cool figure for sure, and another one you just don't see get figures very often. Then we've got ourselves the Mixasaurus, and I really like this one specifically. This kind of like spotting that it has going on is just super striking. I would say when it comes to the actual paint apps of these figures, next to the Shonisaurus, I would say this is probably my favorite out of all of these. But you've got some really nice greenish tones on this one, dark green moving over the top, light green here for the underside. The dark green kind of stripes down into the light green. You can also see those greens striping through the fins, as well as again more of those white spots. The eye is painted with a black, and then it also has kind of like a white spot behind it, almost making it look like that's sloppy paintwork, but I think it's meant to be that way because that's how you see it over here as well. But you can see the black eye has a nice gloss coat to it, which is really cool. You've got a nice long slender snout. You can see the nostrils right there. Again, the skin texture overall is fairly smoothed out. You know, that's just kind of the way all of these marine reptiles for the most part are. You will see a little difference as we continue to move through, and then you lead out into the tail, and again it just has some of that green, a little bit sloppy. Again, you can see it kind of moving over the top here, but sort of just like plastered all over the side over on this side, but still not half bad overall, and another species I don't think I've seen get made before. We as well have a pretty popular one, so not all of them are super obscure, as we have an Elasmosaurus. You can see, again, a little dated as far as this one goes, having almost a little Loch Ness Monster sort of a look to it. The head sculpt looks okay. You've got the black eye right there. You can also see some spots and everything as you move up and over the top of the figure. We have a grayish tone for the primary body color, but you do have a lighter tone, kind of like a white or an off-white here for the underside, which does also actually feature some spots as you move through. But again, similar to all of the others so far, it does have a pretty smoothed out sort of texturing to it, and overall doesn't have a whole lot of really fine detail, but looks good for what it is. And they do a good job of painting these where you can almost see like a speckling, kind of like a grayish speckling moving through, which sort of gives it the appearance of almost having like a slight texturing to it. But we do have that darker gray moving over the top, the lighter gray following along the side, the darker gray returning as you move down into the flippers, and then that light tone on the underside. It also has a little bit of a turn to the head and neck looking toward its right. Not the greatest Elasmosaurus out there, no doubt about that, but when it comes to a mini version, it's pretty fun. Then we've got this one, which is very striking. This is the Metriorhynchus, and as you can see, again, it's pretty decently done overall, and also has a little bit more texturing than some of the others had. Kind of like a creasing look as you move down through the body. You have a brown, a pretty vibrant brown there up in the head, as well as some dark striping that moves through, kind of like a really dark gray striping. You can see the eyes are pretty much the same tone of color, kind of like that dark gray, but there is like a little black spot there for the pupil. The mouth is opened. We can see the teeth sculpted out, painted with a white, and then a reddish tone for the inside of the mouth. As you move down, again, you have like a yellowish tone for the body color. You also have green stripes, as well as those dark gray stripes as you lead through. Those stripes lead down into the legs as well, in both the green and gray. The texturing pretty much remains the same as you move through the entire figure. You do have a bit of a curve to the tail as you lead out, and again, that patterning and everything looks really cool from up above. You see pretty much the same thing. Primarily, the body is pretty straightforward, but then you just have that curve in the tail. The legs are in like pretty much the same position as well, and then you do have a brownish tone for the underside as well. But that is also, again, another species I have never seen created before, so Playvision really did a great job of choosing some super cool obscure species for this set. The next one we have is a pretty interesting one. As you can see, this is the Placodus, and it's maybe the most textured overall when it comes to the figures in this line. You can see, again, it's definitely got some decent texturing to it. It also has a pretty different and unique look to it compared to many of the others. And it's also another species I have never seen actually get a figure before. We do have some decent paintwork here to it. You've got like some brownish tones that move through the body, kind of like a lighter brownish tone for a good bit of the body, but then you have like a different darker tone, actually almost like a dark brown in the face and head, and then you have like a little bit of a lighter tone of brown that kind of moves through. I almost said a reddish brown, but not really. That kind of like stripes down through the side of the figure. You also have some blue spots and stuff moving throughout. You can see some more blue in the front of the mouth as well. We can see the eye is given a nice black pupil there. Basically, that's all you see is a black for the eye, which does also have a little bit of a kind of a shine to it, so it does have sort of like that wet look. You can see a darker brown for the underside of the figure as well. And as you move back, you have like a line of very small ridges that move along the top of the figure leading along. You can see more of those browns kind of striping down through the legs, even a little bit more of the blue that kind of spots down into the legs in a few spots. Leading out, you have a really nice curve to the tail as well, which you can see, especially from up above. It kind of looks like it's just sitting in the water, almost actually looking like it's floating, honestly, or sitting on the bottom of like a riverbed or a pond or something like that. But overall, again, really cool species for sure. Another species I have not seen prior, and a pretty decent version of it. And the final one is the Mosasaurus, and you want to talk about an old school looking version of the Mosasaurus, and I would say that this is probably the way we viewed this creature in the 90s, so I can understand why it has this look, though it is severely outdated by today's standards. You can see the head sculpt looks pretty good. The mouth is slightly open. It's got kind of a weird look to the face, I will say. It almost looks like it's like growling, which obviously isn't something I wouldn't expect a Mosasaurus to do, but we can see it showing its teeth just a little bit there, which are painted out, and you can kind of see that there when you look at it from the side. We have like a grayish tone for the eye and then a black pupil. You also have a darker gray mixed with some blues as you move up to the top of the figure. We can see the nostrils as well. Moving back into the side of the figure, there is a little extra texturing and extra fine detail on this one compared to what we've seen on some of the others. We do have that darker gray moving along the back of the figure as you have almost like a sail-like fin moving over the top of the Mosasaurus, which again at one time looks similar to the way I had seen this creature kind of shown off in many books and stuff. As you move down, you do have a lighter gray for the side of the figure. You also have some more of those darker grays kind of spotting through. It almost looks like there's a slight bit of like a pinkish tone actually moving through this side, like a pinkish tone mixing with the grays, and even a little bit of like a dry brushing of like some bluish greens or something there. It's very subtle and almost hard to pick up on, and I don't know if it's really picking up on camera, but here in hand I can kind of see that. You also have some grays for the flippers, and as you move back you can see the tail does look pretty nice. Also has a nice curve as you lead back toward that area, and you do have kind of like an off-white here for the underside as well, and a few of those spots from the gray kind of moving back here and then trailing down into those lighter tones, and you see those gray spots kind of running through the lighter gray here on the side of the figure. But again, pretty cool. Definitely a really neat looking interpretation of a Mosasaurus. And just like with the amphibians, again, these are in minifigure size range, and I don't think we really need to do comparisons or anything. Definitely no measurements needed because there are so many, but I don't think we really need comparisons because they are pretty much the same size as the amphibians. And to show you that, here are the amphibians all mixed in with the marine reptiles, and showing you that again they are all pretty much in the same similar size range, definitely all in minifigure size range, no doubt about that. So clearly, if you had a pretty good idea of the size of the amphibians, you're going to have a pretty good idea of the size of the marine reptiles. So this set of Playvision marine reptiles is absolutely incredible, and just like I had said with the initial review of the amphibians, you can get this along with the others if you want, again with the amphibians, off of the eBay store Blue Tortoise, and like I said, they gave me an absolutely awesome discount because you can actually get these for 25% off. Now, you really need to remember how old these figures are, from the late 90s, and the fact that they've been discontinued for so long. They are very rare, very hard to find, and this seller is pretty much the only one that I've really seen that has these. So really, if you want them, you absolutely need to take advantage of that discount and grab them as soon as possible. So make sure you do that. Again, I will include a link in the description to their store, and a massive thank you to them for being super kind and allowing me to give everybody a discount on these figures. Again, considering how rare they are, that is super cool of them. But again, another round of incredible Playvision figures, by far the best that they have to offer. Again, when you look at their larger dinosaur figures and stuff, they don't compare at all to these mini marine reptiles and of course the amphibian set. These are the best Playvision prehistoric figures that I personally have seen, and again, another round of awesomeness here. I wouldn't say these are quite as nice as the amphibians, but they're not too far behind, and they do feature some really cool, really obscure species that you don't see get made ever, honestly, with some, and of course the others not all that often outside of like the Elasmosaurus and Mosasaurus, but even those again have kind of like that older look to them, which makes them also quite appealing, you know, something you don't see too often nowadays. Sculpt-wise, they are all really quite nice. Paint-wise, again, very impressive considering they are minis. You don't often see minis get such impressive paintwork, so I have to give them props as far as that goes. And again, so many super cool species in this set. So if you are interested, make sure you check the link that I will include in the description to grab these again from the eBay store that I mentioned. Make sure you grab them as soon as possible so you can use the discount. The discount code will not last forever, so make sure you grab it as soon as possible so that you can save yourself a few dollars. And also, again, as I already mentioned, these are, you know, long discontinued and retired, so in general these sets won't last forever, so you make sure you grab them while you still have the opportunity, or you'll probably regret it later. So make sure you check that link, use the code Andy, and save yourself 25% off, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.